All right. Thank you all for settling in. I know it's hard to make transitions, but you did that so exceptionally well, good people. You really did. It is an honor and a privilege to bring us to a close today with two very powerful folks. And we've talked about a lot over these past couple of days, right? Our brains have been stretched to capacity. I just want to acknowledge in this room that I am not an academic. And have no desire to be, but it is not my ministry by any means. And so this has definitely been a place of stretching for me. But as a creative, as a person that is a cultural organizer, as a person that deeply believes in cultural strategies, to see how all of these conversations have been so interconnected and just so thought-provoking, I'm really excited to jump into our panel discussion today around dissemination. How are we talking about taking what we have started to develop here, started to think about, and move that into our communities? What are the strategies that we're already doing to move said work, and what are the things that we need to consider when thinking about taking this work to the next level? And so today I am joined by your two discussants, as they are called, in the agenda. But Cory Ellen is here, our postdoctoral scholar, Actions Program, and Philip R. Lee Institute for Health Policy Studies at UCSF. And give them a round of applause because they're dope and amazing. And also Marisa, who is the co-director of Collective Power and doing big, bold things. Y'all give her a round of applause, too. And my name is Monica. I'm the executive director of SisterSong, and I get the power and privilege of holding this conversation down. So the grounding question for this panel today is about where the movement has gone, right? And how has it gone? And I think I was really deeply thinking about Norbese's question too around infrastructure. And so this grounding question that is posed to us in the agenda that I want each of our panelists to talk about, and then give them an opportunity to talk a little bit about their work before we get into the questions around dissemination, is what is the difference between RJ in 1994, 2004, and 2026? Right? So we think about 1994, which is, of course, when those 12 Black women came together to name and frame this movement. We think about 2004 as a very interesting political turn as well, and 2026 where we are. Now, as I was just thinking about the three of these, I thought about who was in office and what powers, quote unquote, were at play. In 1994, that was the Clinton administration. In 2004, that was George W. Bush. And then in 2026, we have an asshole in office. And so I think about what that has meant for us and how that has impacted the way that we think about our work and how we do our work. And so my question to you all is, when did you enter, right, when you think about that continuum of 1994, 2004, and 2026, when did you enter, and what was alive for you when you entered into this movement, and how has that impacted the way that you are now showing up in your work? And to model that, I'll just talk about the fact that I was first introduced to RJ in 2007 at the U.S. Social Forum. Anybody was in that room at the U.S. Social Forum in Atlanta in 2007? And that's the first time I heard Loretta Ross speak. I was introduced to this concept of RJ. At the time, I was doing work around abolishing for-profit private prisons and immigrant detention centers, and I did not have language around what I was seeing in that particular work until I heard Loretta's speech about intersectionality and human rights in this RJ frame. And I was like, put me in, coach. And as the universe would have it, a couple of years later, I made my way to SisterSong to start working there in 2010, right? And so as I've seen SisterSong's kind of trajectory along these times, I think about the fact that our first national Let's Talk About Sex conference was developed in 2007. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. I think about the 2010s of a thing, right? As they were naming it, like the war on women, and we saw all of the anti-abortion legislations and things starting to creep across the country, right? So it's been an interesting time to see how politically and just culturally so much has shifted from my entry point in 2007 and 2010. So Marisa, for you, can you talk about what your entry point was and how that has moved you into the work that you're also leading now?
Sure. So I think one of the first and most important things that everybody understand about me is that I'm a triple Libra. So for those of you that matters, right? And so entering into this work felt like a constant in my life, but then an actual acknowledgement of understanding that I was doing reproductive justice work was in 2010 when I started working with the Prison Birth Project. Mm-hmm. We were an organization that was founded under the idea that we could provide dignity and support and politicization and community education and all of the things that we wanted to do to people who were behind the wall and pregnant. It was really important to us to begin to imagine what does it look like to resituate the power structure out from being a moment of we are framed only in as the acts of the things that we do and seeing us as full people. And so I went into college in 1994 when reproductive justice was being introduced to the world. And so getting to have all of the faculty, and this is the moment I want to again deeply apologize for my psychotic UNC moment last night, y'all. I am a UNC grad. I can't help myself. It comes out, and when the D school name is said, I can't help it. I cannot help it. But anyway, what does it mean to like really have Black feminist grounding my education and to give me the words and begin to give me the framework that then led me towards doing work in reproductive justice before I even knew I was doing work in reproductive justice. Yeah. So it's always been a part of the way that I approach, the way that I think, the way that I move. How does my individual story connect to the collective? What is the collective? Who are the collective? How do we bring more people into the collective? All of those things have been guiding questions that I didn't even know that I had words for from the moment that I can remember having questions.
Hi, I'm
Hey.
Hi. So I'm Cory Ellen. I use pronouns she, her. And in 1997, that was the year that I turned 18, and I was a freshman in college, and there was an opportunity to do clinic escorting at the local Planned Parenthood. And so that was where I was. I was working in abortion access and rights, but I had a car, right? Nobody else had a car, but I had a car. It was my grandma's 1982 Buick Skylark.
It's a good car.
It was a great car. And I became known in the community as the person who both had knowledge about abortion access and had a car. And so I started giving people rides to abortions. I started going inside with people and holding their hands. And so I started doing abortion, what we now call abortion doula work, right, when I was 18. And then in 2004, I had been through a hell of a lot. I had left an abusive relationship. I had moved to Los Angeles. And in 2009, I started an organization called, and I'm sorry because I would not make this choice again, LA for Choice. And that was also a clinic escorting organization and an abortion access organization. And in 2010, is Norbese still in the room? I had the privilege of meeting Norbese and working in community with Black Women for Wellness. And that was really when the RJ framework I became intensely aware that the work that I was doing needed to shift in a big way. I was, by that time, also a birth worker. I went back to nursing school because I had to make a living, and realized that nursing as a clinical practice and educational system and knowledge system was, if you'll pardon my highly academic terminology, deeply fucked. And so I started doing work to bring an RJ framework to my work in nursing. I went back, I got my PhD. And here I am continuing that work.
Beautiful. And so I just want you all just to take a moment, too, to think about where you enter, right? Because the way in which we enter really helps us start to think about the best ways to help other people enter as well. What were the things that helped you understand this work? Was it because you read somebody's book? Was it because you went to someone's class? Was it because you were activated and you went to your first rally? What was that entry point for you? Right? Because I think, again, as we are now getting ready to get an opportunity to hear a little bit more about the work of these two folks, holding on to that as we move into these questions around what are the things that we already know, what are the things that are working, that's going to help us really start to devise those strategies in those creative ways, right? That we're going to help our people see themselves reflected because you saw yourself reflected. and your entry point, right? Which will then help us think about what are the best ways for us to move the work to our people. So coming back to you for a second, Marisa, collective power, you all have a very particular role that you play in this movement, right? You are holding a part of an infrastructure that is about development and learning and teaching and training and like bringing up this next generation of leaders. As we think about this conversation around dissemination and what it's going to take to move a lot of these different conversations and new concepts to folks, how do you see the role of collective power playing a role in connecting those worlds?
Well, I mean, there's just so many ways that I could go with this answer because, again, my triple leap of self is like, well, we could go from this frame. But the one that I think that grounds in the most in this room is what Joyce introduced to you all on Wednesday. The work we are doing right now in reminding activists and academics, bridging the two groups together, because that is our role in community. That is our role in the movement, is we bridging those two groups together to create a timeline that respects and reflects and acknowledges and loves and celebrates and finds all of the things that we've been discussing this last few days in history, in resistance, in an understanding that the 1994, the 1864s, the whatever year you want to point to, we know that we have been resisting. Mm-hmm. We know the community knows all of the things that you all have raised. Mm-hmm. It's been so clear to me and so interesting to me to hear, because like Monica, I don't identify as an academic. Mm-hmm. Maybe a long time ago I did, right? But not anymore. I definitely lean in the lane of activism. I am that activist in the room. I don't have the list of all of these authors and folks and the data and all of that, right? I don't need that to know the answer. I really don't. I need you all because you all validate what we already know. Right? Like I was writing anecdotal notes left and right of all of the ways I have experienced all of the things you're talking about when I'm working with community. That's right. And so collective power, our goal, our work is about bridging and making sure that folks that I'm in the room with know all of the things you all have been talking about. So what does it actually look like to do that? It's a collaboration. It's a coming to us. It's us coming to you, right? Our work is about meeting people where they're at. Yeah. So we don't have to have all of those different names of all these different authors to do that, because everybody's coming with so much different knowledge, so many different lived experiences. But the thread of our experience is the reproductive oppression. Mm-hmm. We all can resonate with each other in some way. We can find that entry point of connection. Yeah. And so that's the work that I really want to highlight that we do, because we do amazing programs, right? We've been around for 40 plus years. Yeah. You all know our work. Mm-hmm. But this part that we're doing right now, where we are tying the work to history, and we're doing it in a way that makes it accessible, the way that Dr. Cooper talked about writing in a 6th grade level, the way that Dr. Cooper talked about making sure that we all can connect, right? The way that that Dr. Fleming talked about that ancestral connection. Yeah. All of those things are built into this project, and that's at the heart and the core of what it means to start to disseminate.
That makes sense. That makes perfect sense, Marisa. Thank you for that. And just to make a note, right? You said that you all have been around for 40 years. So I think what I'm also trying to draw a line through here in this conversation as we think about 94 to 2004 to where we are in 2026, we have been building infrastructure, right? There is an institution that has 40 plus years. I think about SisterSong in that 1997. I think Sister Love is 1995 or 6. Your founding? 89. Right? So, I just want to just start to also bring those things together, right? Around the ways in which we have been building really powerful infrastructure. And now we get to think about how we want to take that to the next level. So coming over to you, my dear sis, you are on this panel because you are also bringing in this practitioner role, right? And thinking about what that part of our work looks like as we are really thinking about these strategies for how we get this information to people. Can you talk about the work that you are doing now and how you see those two things meeting?
Yes. I'm going to pull this thing out.
Absolutely. Yeah. Get comfortable.
Yeah. So the work that I'm doing now is I sit in a place called the Actions Lab, which is the Abortion Care Training Incubator for Outstanding Nurse Scholars, founded by the esteemed Dr. Monica McLemore. Right? And the work that the Actions Lab is doing that I am involved with is a reproductive justice evaluation of abortion care training programs. And so California put $20 million into establishing the Reproductive Health Service Corps, which is a group of 5 institutions plus us that are all working to expand and diversify the abortion care workforce in the state of California. It sounds really great on paper, and it is really great in reality, but it was brought to the attention of the people who are doing this work that nobody was looking at how are we incorporating reproductive justice, right? What are we watching when we're looking at expanding abortion care? Like, that's not a neutral activity, right? So let's make sure that we have a process for making that for incorporating reproductive justice into this work. So my work is to sit there, comb through all of these curriculum, right, and look at not just explicit inclusion. I'm really concerned that we not just look at how people are saying the words reproductive justice. It's not a little lecture that you pop into the first unit, right, and say, okay, we're framing our work as reproductive justice. Now moving on, let's talk about pain management. No, when we talk about pain management, right, who are we centering? Are we thinking about how folks who use opioids need different pain management? Are we looking at how sex workers have specific access needs in abortion care? Are we looking at travel, right? Who are we centering? Who are we training? Some of our partner organizations are really physician focused. Okay, but we also have the Black Midwifery Fellowship, right? Which is Dr. Nakia Grayson.
That's right.
And upcoming Dr. Asmara Gibre, right, at UCSF.
Okay.
And they are building abortion care training as well. So who are we training? The Nurses for Sexual and Reproductive Health, they're building abortion care trainings for RNs, LPNs, doulas, and EMTs, right? And so that's the work that we are evaluating and that we are amplifying, right? My role is not to critique. It is to highlight, it is to help people build.
Beautiful. So what I've heard from both of you, a couple of things. One, some of the ways that we're already doing this work, looking at it from you all's lens and how you're doing it through the two places that you're holding it down, is that you're creating these opportunities and spaces for folks to bridge, right? When I think about collective powers work and helping to create the infrastructure that then allows these conversations to move, right, into these communities of activists, right, who are going to be doing the work on the ground. And then thinking about the practice part of like the service provision is how are we making sure that we are getting the right information rooted in RJ, you know, to those practitioners, training them up in a way that they can understand how to move this work out to those people who are actually needing those services, right? So those are two very, very concrete ways that you all are doing that, and I appreciate you bringing those examples to the table. But we heard something last night, and I've been hearing it across, you know, the different conversations that we've had over the past couple of days, and it's really been about, these are big words. These are big theories. These are things that are going to take a lot of time, a lot of energy to even develop, right? And the concern is that our community, right, and the communities that we serve, when we think about these next set of questions around what do we know, who are the most affected, and how will we get the messages to them, the concern that keeps showing up in the room is that folks will not be able to grasp this information, therefore it will not allow them to actually move on any of the things that we're talking about. What are some of the barriers or some of the things from you all's areas of work that you have seen come up around making the connection for folks, right? Have there been things that you've been able to assess in your work that has helped, that we can now think about as those barriers that we can then try to put some solutions around? Anything come up for you all around that?
Y'all are seeing what the activists do in a panel. Like, what do you want to do? What do you do? Emergent. Yeah. So what's coming up for me is the work that we do together. So, right, so to say that we both only have those one hats is silly. Because anybody who knows us knows, I mean, Julicia is always telling people, this bitch is the busiest bitch I know in the Valley. I am really busy. I wear a lot of hats. In addition to being the co-executive director of Collective Power, I'm also the chair of the Abortion Rights Fund Board of Western Mass. I'm also the vice chair of URGE, and I also work with an organization called Empty Arms Bereavement Support, where we work with people who are experiencing pregnancy and infant loss. So Dr. Cooper, I see you fully when you say you walk with grief. I know, I deeply know. So anyway, all that to say that that's what frames the way that we think about the work that we do together for me. We also co-founded together DARLA, which is the Doula Association for Reproductive Loss and Abortion. I got lost in my own dang perimenopausal brain for a second there. You saw me stall out. Thank you for that. See, again, emergent co-leading together.
I love it.
So anyway, we co-founded that because we wanted to address the abortion doula question in this community. What does it look like to think about doing that work and creating a response to a need, right? Again, community doesn't need scholarship to know how to respond to a need. And in that work is where I would love to like tease out a little bit some of the ways that we've found barriers and the ways we have to work through those barriers. I think one of the biggest things that we did, so that we've done multiple trainings, and each one gets a little bit more, ooh, this is a little bit better. Ooh, look at what we should have done differently last time, right? Because we're always learning, always growing. And the thing that I think we got to is that we need a 4-person training model because we need to make sure that the expertise of our opportunity of working with privilege and education gets to have access, that community has access to the educational access that we had, right? So thinking about, and then also thinking about what are the communities when we go to these activist situations or convening saying, they're saying they want the knowledge back centered in community. They want community members to know, they want to hear the stories. They want to be sacred in the protection of those stories, but they don't want to feel like they don't know, right? Like they need to know, it's our survival. Yeah. And so we've started thinking about, well, what does that look like? How do we operationalize that? Because that is a very big barrier. And knowledge is a barrier, right? Like if you don't know what you don't know. And so we start to really think about and tease out. So one of the things we realized and we teased out was the difference between therapy and therapeutic, right? And when you slow down enough to think about those two things, you realize that there is an absolute socialized and licensed and all of these ways of being that come with being therapy. There's all this knowledge set. There's all of this expectations. It's based in the academy, right? And then there's therapeutic, where we're showing up and we're doing and we're practicing some of the things that therapy is telling us we should be doing. But when we have a therapist in the room, that's what allows for us to be able to play with that line with our community members. Because we're not interested in, again, what the academy says, we're interested in how the community can move with that line so they can show up with that line. Because that's the key of this work, y'all. It's not just this high meta thoughts, right? It's what does it mean when it's in action in community? And so that's one of the big ways that we've been able to address and start to think about barrier. I don't want to take too many of our examples, so I'll pass to Cory Ellen.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually going to go, I'm going to hold that, and I'm also going to move Dr. Brittany Cooper. I need to name that your work was foundational for my dissertation. Thank you. That one of the things that I hold a lot, because I also work in medical and nursing history, is genealogies of intellectual thought, right? And what is intellectual knowledge? How do we name and define and put boundaries around these systems of knowledge, right? And so when we are working with DARLA, but I want to name and amplify and hold community knowledge and wisdom. I want to recognize that I did not invent this work, that this work is old, that this work has traditions, that the people who have maintained those traditions have names that we can find and we can speak and we can hold in the room, right? And I also have been working with folks in other countries, in Mexico, in Nicaragua, right, in abortion accompaniment work, and not discovering, that is the wrong word, learning from and with acompañantes, right, who have been navigating systems of criminalization to do abortion support work, and who have been challenging those boundaries between what is clinical and what is not clinical, right? Those boundaries are imaginary. Shocker, right? We all know that. Just like national boundaries are fictional, right? Networks of care do not need to stop at political borders. And networks of knowledge do not need to stop at political borders. Right? So I hold the work that is being done by those folks in Mexico and Nicaragua, and also within the United States, because migrants cross borders, right? I hold that work, and I work with folks collaboratively and safely, because nobody needs a target on their back they did not ask for, to bring that knowledge and work into clinical spaces, right? Co-authoring, in conversation, with community engagement and community advice. I call it my accountability team, right? I don't move without checking. And that's a lot of the work that I'm trying to do around pushing those boundaries of knowledge.
Awesome. We're going to open this up to you all because we only have a few more minutes, so we want to be able to bring in you all's thoughts, perspectives, questions, commentary on this too, because we need you all to help us think about, and this is our opportunity in our space to build out some of those suggestions, right, that we're hoping will come out of this around how do we move this work to our folks. But I want to give an example of something really quickly from some of the work that SisterSong does. We've heard terms like narrative power in the room today. We've heard culture in the room. And so just wanting to make sure that people understand what those things mean in the context to our work. I think storytelling has always been a very key component to all the work that we do in this movement from the very beginning. SisterSong and all of our trainings start with, we all have a story to tell, right? Like that is fundamental and foundational to our work. But this new notion that we are hearing around narrative change, around changing the way that people perceive and use their stories to be able to shift concepts, frames, and things like that. And then the notion of culture shift, which is about the deeper work of actually moving the systems and things that really prevent people from, or to encourage people to, right, think about things differently. That is an interesting part of this movement, right, that I feel like we've been contending with. And I think it's a really important part to how we think about how we move this work to our people. Y'all feel me? So, an example, we've been operating for many years. You know, like we would always say that the core tenets of RJ was the human right to have a child, not have a child, and parent, right? And it took us a minute to get that clarity into people's mind around like what that means when we talk about RJ. And then around 2014, at SisterSong, we expanded that to a fourth tenet around bodily autonomy more explicitly. Not to say that that was not already included in the way that we thought about RJ, but we wanted to make it more explicit in how we were defining it and moving that information into our communities. And so now we have been doing work in a cultural space around how do we bring more people who had never even heard of these concepts, right, to bring them closer to the work. And we're coming up against more barriers, right? Which has been very interesting. So most recently we did a Black Men's Roundtable. Did y'all see this work? You did? Yes. Yeah, it was a thing, right? Yes, it was a thing. Listen, so, and it went viral. This is a whole situation. It went viral. And the reason we did it, one, because we've been building with this bigger question of like, how do we bring men into this movement? That's one way. But the other thing was we wanted to get more clarity on how does this framework, the language that we use, resonate in communities that are not regularly talking about these issues. And when I tell y'all, it tripped these brothers up a lot. They could not wrap their brains around this, because we think it's so simple now. The right to have a child, not have a child, parent, bodily autonomy. It took us really breaking this thing down for them with their own lived experiences for them to understand how this framework makes sense to them. It was a huge barrier. And it was a wake-up call for us as an organization that has been training thousands of people, that has scholarly articles in all of these different places. It was one of those moments where we had to reckon with the fact that the way that we are talking about this work, the way that we are moving this work, is still not going as deeply as we need it to in our communities. And so what is the missing link that helps us make that loop happen, right? So that we do not continue just to build powerful theory, but not be able to give clear ways for people to put that work into practice, right? So with that being said, I would love to hear from you all. What are some of the ways, even when you think about your own work, how you are trying to move work in? What are some of the ideas that you all are thinking about how we start to move this work out? I don't think that the ways that we've done this work is going to be the thing that's going to save us, y'all. I don't. I think that some of the things we're going to hold true to, but the way that we have to think about moving this information and moving more people into this movement through their own experiences has to look different. It has to, right? So yes, Billy. Yes, please. Can you pass it over? Thank you so much.
Back in the day, when we were the National Black Women's Health Project, we wanted to reach out to the brothers.
Yep.
And so, our thing is telling your story. My name, I grew up in D-Land, Florida, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
These men said to me, we have no way to do that. I say, well, you have a mouth and you're sitting right in front of me. What is your name? Where did you grow up? Where did you do things? And they actually they got to be taught how to do what we naturally do. Yeah, they got to be taught that it really is okay to talk about your feelings. Then on our hand, I don't want you to make the mistake I made. We really want them to come together and talk about beating women, violence against women. That was our back agenda. When we asked them to talk about violence, they talked about being in the war. They talked about being vulnerable to gun violence, and that wasn't what we wanted to hear. So we say, out of here. Don't make that mistake, because that's their starting place. That's where they enter. And and what I've come to understand, you start with people where they are, and don't get up and mighty and think, it ain't gonna. But the men don't know how to tell their stories. They don't know how to have. We were talking to them about forming self-help groups and talking to each other. The place where we did have very good success in Atlanta was at what is now the Black Women's Wellness Center that we started. Yeah, the Center for Black Women's Wellness that we started over in the housing project was when the foundation came and asked me, they said, we'll give you money if you will bring together the men in the housing projects and their sons to talk about sex education. Boy, they were so happy. They came with their sons, and I can remember at least 2 or 3 hour conferences, somebody like Deja and them will remember, we had as many black men at that conference as we had women. But they really came because they didn't know how to talk to their sons, and I think they were really glad that somebody was paying attention to them. Because they used to always say to me, why didn't I organize black men? And I say, because I've never been a black man. And I'm organizing black women. It's a full-time job. And I want them to go out and organize themselves. So just take a tip from them.
100%, we receive that. And I think that's important to name here, because we're seeing that across a couple of different, we could talk about the men part of it, but even when we think about abortion, right? And we know that that's been an entry point for a lot of people, whether it's their own lived experience, just wanting to be an advocate, wanting to make sure that we have the access that we deserve. And I remember when we started to see these black women die, unfortunately, like Amber Thurman and Candy Miller, right? That was a turning point for us to start to talk about abortion in Black communities differently, right? It wasn't that we weren't saying the same things around like, we need to be, Roe is the floor. We need to have different access. We need better. It wasn't resonating with our communities. The polling would say that people should believe or people believe that they should be able to have access to it. But when we were trying to get people to come to the table and to come out in the streets or to do that, they were not coming. Right? So that is a sign, that's an indication that the messages and the wording and all the things that we are trying to use isn't making its way there, right? And I know that this might be a little uncomfortable for folks because I don't want to make it seem like we're not powerful and amazing at what we're doing. But the goal of this session, because we've been talking about all of these very big things, is to think about what is going to penetrate into our communities, right? That would actually help to move our folks and to build a movement. Right? Not just to have folks well informed on what the what the theory is, but to build a movement who is ready to move and be activated around the issues that we need them to be moved and activated around. Yes, I see your hand.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So this is just how to get the youth and the young ones interested in young boys. Oh,
Thank you, sis.
I was just gonna scream that when one of the ways that they organize themselves when things started happening in Palestine, like visually, right, is they use Roblox to have like marches on Roblox, right? And so they're like, and Roblox, that's when they started paying attention to Roblox. That now they're pretending that they care about the PDFs on Roblox, but it's not. It's because the kids were organizing themselves through Roblox to have, like, you were playing Roblox and all of a sudden you were inside of a pro-Palestine march. And so many joined that way. So I need us to tap into that. The young men's need to like organize where they are. They're online playing those streaming games, whatever. So why don't we tap into them saying, okay, we're gonna create our own video game, our own story. We're gonna code our futures. You present it to them as coding our futures. And then think to them and say, okay, but we're gonna develop your story. We want your story to be part of it. Now, what about your mama's story? Where's she gonna fit in here? What about your sisters? What about all these people? Because you need like character development. Let's think about character development and thinking about this world. So get them where they are. They love anime, right? Yeah. They love anime. They love video games. They love graphic novels, right? And so if we talk about men not being able to tell their stories, they just hate the fact that the mode that we want them to tell their stories are restricted by what white people tells us is how you tell the story. We are oral tradition. So when I did watch that round table, right? They keep talking about podcasts. Give these little kids a podcast. Like what? Not to share with the world, right? No. But present it to them like we're gonna do a podcast, right? And we're gonna grapple with these questions and come at you with these things. But just like the men that you be watching that say out of pocket things, I want you in your wildest imagination. How would we all be free? Right? And right. Then build in the language of RJ. Say like, well, how can you be free if your mama's not free, your sister's not free? Because if they only understand it relationally, let's start there and build from there.
I hear that.
And those games and the thing like anime. Tap into that anime because they want to tell their stories. Change the mode.
I just want to really share quickly that during my prison birth project, this is exactly the work that we were doing, right? We came behind the wall. We were like, we're going to make sure all the incarcerated women know this is what patriarchy is. This is this. And it was like, what the fuck are y'all talking about? Right? Like, I got to get out of here and go do X, Y, and Z. I got to try to get my children back. I got to try to, right? Like, they didn't give a fuck. But when we shifted to meet them where they were at and brought that information in a way that met them where they were at, everybody was like, let me tell you my story. Yeah. And that's when the stories came out. Right? So it's like, again, this work, these all these theories, the ways you all have been talking about this, operationalizing it looks like a nuanced way of being, right? Because then there's also the other part of it where somebody has told their story. They are feeling empowered. They are moved. But how do we then know and recognize to move with them and bring them? And don't just stall, right? Look, one of the best moments I had in a collective power conversation was when somebody in the room said, this movement's real good about doing this, but how do we see this?
Yes.
And I was like, oh, shit.
That's real.
Right? So, like, we got to remember that, yeah, we are bringing and we're meeting and we're doing, but where are we leading? Where are we moving? Where are we helping them get the 201, the 301, the 401, if we want to keep it in the academy's language? Right?
And do we need to keep it in the academy's language?
No,
What we're
I don't think we do, but I'm using it, right?
No, 100%. And I think that as in this notion of going here and there, it's also how much more deeper are we going to? I would just add that. And I think about when we in this room, who's missing from this room? Right? Like, that's the other thing that we want to interrogate here when we think about dissemination, because if you are really truly trying to get this to the deepest of communities and to stretch beyond the communities that we are all currently engaged with, who's missing from this conversation, right? Who are those folks that we need to bring in that may not be here now too, right? So yes, and can y'all somebody give me a time thing, because I don't know what I'm on.
Yeah, right.
Oh, okay, all right.
I guess we're closing with this.
Okay,
Okay,
so
yes.
I just wanted to say that you're exactly right. We tell our stories, we get things, we understand them, we love them, we can see the value of them. We can't wait till we have the chance to teach it to children. But the men have to be reached. They have to be reached. And it'll come to you in different ways. It'll come to you sometimes as a man that wants you to teach them. It will come to you sometimes as a little boy who wants to know, my sister comes home every day and she's talking about this, that, and the other, and I don't, where am I in all of this? It'll start there, and you just go with what you have. And that will lead to a mother who comes and says, I have other sons. Can the boy's father come too? Because I don't want him left out. Even though they may not be living together, she knows the boys are going to take a certain amount from her, and then they're going to take a certain amount from their daddy. So she wants her boys there, and she wants their father there. And we just have to be more flexible in how, and not everybody can do this work.
That's true.
I'm a woman who's been raped. It took me a long time to be able to scoot over to be interested, but what won me over were the boys. The boys took me to the men. But we cannot leave the men out. We've got to figure out a way.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So I'm hearing a couple of things. One, that we have an opportunity to get to new audiences, right? And we can use untraditional methods. I'm hearing these AI ways that we can do it. There's ways that we can use, or maybe not AI because we're still debating that. But regardless, we do have current ways of video games and all the different ways. But more importantly, what I'm hearing is that we got to meet people where they are, right? Right? So how are we making sure that we are all positioning ourselves in the various places that we entered into this work from to meet people where they are, and where they want to be met. Yes. I mean, amen, ashe to that, right? And where they want to be met. And then from that, right, it's like, how do we ensure that those people that we are now meeting where they are and where they want to be met are given opportunities and access into the spaces, right, that we are now building some of these larger, broader conversations around? How do we make that bridge for people to do that, right? And then I'm also hearing from the last statement that you made, dear sister, is around the lanes, right? I think that there is this competition factor that we have sometimes. Everybody think they got to do the same thing, and we actually don't. We all have very unique, very clear, very powerful lanes that we can be occupying in the ways that we do this work that could actually help us have more impact and more reach if we're not all trying to convolute into one space to try to do one thing and to use one particular strategy. So that's something else that I heard, even in the comment that you just made. The other thing that we did talk about were some of the barriers, right, that we're going to have to keep coming up against. But I do think if we hold tight to this notion of that we have to meet people where they are and where they want to be met, that is where we actually build the best opportunities for us to be able to really push this thing forward. And I think that we can all give many different examples of that. And I'm also going back to the point when, in the grounding question that the planning team laid out for this conversation when looking at from 1994 to 2026, the fact that in 1994 there weren't any quote unquote RJ organizations, even though we can say that they were definitely organizations already operating in an RJ frame, right? To see where we are today and how much this movement has grown and expanded, right? That is a powerful thing to like take stock of and to understand like what we have been able to build over these past 30 plus years of this movement that gives us a solid foundation to really move this work from, right? So I want to make sure that we're not losing that as a train as we're thinking about the grounding question that we were given. I want to give you one more opportunity to speak, and then I'll go back to the audience before I wrap us up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel really strongly that I would not be doing my duty as a clinician and a representative of a deeply abusive healthcare system if I did not get up here and ask you all, how many of you have health profession students in your classes? Right? Please, please bring them in, right? Because those folks are going to be moving through incredibly siloed spaces in which they are taught that they are the experts, that they have knowledge that they gain in those spaces that then they can pass along or not, that they gatekeep, that they translate, that they provide care. They do not understand that they are working in community, that they are learning from community, that they are bringing community expertise and wisdom into those spaces unless they are told.
That's real.
And I do think that, we focus a lot on physicians, right? And we do not talk about nurses and nursing students.
Yeah.
And we do not talk about them enough. And they are providing the majority of the intimate care that we all experience in acute healthcare settings.
That's very real.
So I really want to uplift that and ask you all to hold that as you move back into these academic lives and spaces.
I love that. I'll say this last thing too for us and the work that we've moved into at SisterSong is that we've had to be okay with people not saying it how we would say it.
Yes. Yes.
They just not gonna say it how we say it. They're not gonna. They're not. Right? They're just not. And does that mean that we have failed? No. Does that mean that we have an opportunity to continue to grow and build a base? Absolutely. Right? And so I think that's the other thing for those of us who have worked so hard for to build the words and the articles and the theory like that. Let me tell you something. Y'all done. Every time I come into an academic space, I be like, y'all be on a whole other level, right? And I give so much respect for that. But we had to just get okay with the fact that if they understood it in a way that made sense to them, that is a win, right? And how do we keep building upon that win to keep building movement, right? And to keep making sure that more people are getting access to what we know that they need access to, and that it helps to bring them more power within themselves. Any other last points that we want to be able to grab? Yeah, go ahead.
One quick thing.
Yeah.
That one thing that Mama Billy taught me through action is that you don't have to have a whole school or conference center.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be 100 people that show up.
Yeah.
I've also been following this IG woman, Candace Owens, the six-figure spa chick, who says, don't mistake the fact that only 4 people showed up at your event.
Yep.
Don't make that be a failure because you were able to disseminate that information to 4 people in a manner in which they can understand.
That's right.
And they can take it back out to somebody else.
This is very important.
So Mama Billy taught me to go to, just call your friends over to the house.
Yeah.
And fix some food and talk at
That's
the
right.
table, and then start your organizing from that point to move forward.
100%. It does not. Yes, ma'am.
And you will have 2 people that show up, and you had it catered. You got all the stuff there. They go back and tell the community what you had for them.
Yes.
And the next time you get 8.
Yes.
And the next time you didn't plan for enough people because so many people have come.
Yes.
The men come slower than that. But they come and they want to learn because they want to start talking to their friends. And you don't want them to talk about everything they think they heard. You want to make sure that you're in touch with them to make sure that they stay on the story that we've learned from the academics.
Tell it.
This elder wisdom today has been a joy to my soul. This part of the work really means a lot to me. It means a lot to SisterSong. We are a movement building organization. We are committed to making this movement accessible for the masses, right? And we do that in a deeply cultural way. And one of the ways that we're going to continue this conversation around Afrofuturism, the way that we're going to continue to do this work and to build more power at our intersections is at our National Let's Talk About Sex conference in August.
Do it.
Speak of that timeline again, this will be, we're celebrating the 20th anniversary, although it technically isn't until 2027, but we will not have our conference that year. But 20 years ago, nearly, was the first sexual reproductive justice centered conference for our communities, intentionally called Let's Talk About Sex. This year we are building this thing out bigger, and it's going to require all of us. So Loretta is already tapped in on continuing this RJ Futurisms conversation, so y'all got to be there for that. And we're taking the conference up a notch because our goal this year is about how do we really take this theory of intersectionality that we talk about so grandly all the time and really look at what that means in practice in terms of building power at our intersections. We are literally taking the words of our dear founding executive director, Loretta Ross, and calling our people into this movement, right? All of them, because this is the time that we need to build that collective foundation. Sorry, say it again? I'm getting there. We need to build that. And it is in August 6th through the 9th in Chicago. There's a lot of dope stuff happening in Chicago this summer. It really, truly is. And we're excited to bring up the rear and to bring the conference to fruition then. So please go to our information at all of our things and get tapped in. And we want you all presenting. We want you talking. We want you bringing your brilliance into that space. And we want this to be the biggest. In a year where they're telling us to retract, to retreat, to not think that we can build and bring our people together, we are trying our best to move on the opposite side of that, to say that we will build, we will continue to do the work that we need to do to grow this movement, because we all deserve to see liberation in our lifetimes, right? Yes. So that's what we're gonna do. Can y'all please give it up to these amazing panelists today? It's hard to round out a conversation, and you all did it very beautifully. Thank y'all, thank y'all, thank y'all. I'm now turning this over to Dazan, who is going to close us out officially.